Hello everyone, in this video we'll be stepping you through a sample solution to question 2 from the sample questions for written examination 2 for VCE Specialist Mathematics. So the question provides a procedure written in pseudocode. The output of the pseudocode is a list of numbers and we are asked to determine the final number in the list. So what we're going to do is construct a trace table on the right hand side of our screen here. And if you want some more information on what trace tables are and how they fit into pseudocode, please check out our course and videos in the link below. And what we're going to do is step through the pseudocode one line at a time, updating our trace table as we go along. So the very first line there says declare integer n. So what that means is we are going to create a new variable called n. You can see that we've added that to our trace table there. And then we're going to progress one line at a time, top to bottom, making sure to update our trace table. The next line is declaring integer f. So there's the new variable in the left-hand column. Declaring integer t1. So t1 is there in our variable names column. And similarly for t2, which is the next line of pseudocode. So at this stage, we have declared all 4 of our variables with their names. The next 4 lines of pseudocode are going to initialize or give them some initial values. So setting f to 0. So what we do there is we are assigning the value 0 to the variable f. So we pop the value there into the middle column of our trace table. T1 is set to 2. So there's 2 being assigned to T1, and 3 is set to T2. There's 3 in the middle column next to T2. And setting n to 3, there's 3 assigned to n. So the repeat word means we are going to loop. And what that means is that all the indented lines of code between repeat and end loop will be repeated n times. So there's the repeat keyword. These are all the indented lines of code between repeat and end loop. So there's a chunk of 3 of them there, and it will be repeated n times. When we see a variable name being used in an expression like this, we just look up the variable name in our trace table, we find its corresponding value, and we essentially substitute it into our expression. So that's essentially saying we're going to repeat that indented block of code 3 times. How we handle that is we still go through the lines one at a time, top to bottom. So we look at that first line of code in the indented block. We see that f is equal to t1 plus 2 times t2. Now the equal sign in pseudocode is slightly different to the equal sign in maths, in that we need to always evaluate the right-hand side first. So we look at the right-hand side, we see that expression. We're going to substitute values for any variables that we find. So t1 is substituted by its value of 2, and t2 is going to be substituted by its value of 3. Then we evaluate that expression using BODMAS and standard rules of arithmetic. So that evaluates to 8. Now that we have finished evaluating the right-hand side, we can then assign it back to the variable on the left-hand side. So we're going to take that 8 and put it back into f, so you notice now that 0 gets updated to 8. On the next line of code, we see the equal sign again. Once again, we look at the right-hand side, which is f, the variable. We're going to substitute in its latest value of 8. And you'll notice that this changed from its initial value of 0. It's important that we always use the newest value to substitute. And this is why it's important to run the code one line at a time, because previous lines of code which have run may change the value of variables, and this affects how we evaluate the current line. And this is also why having a trace table is super important for us to keep track of how the variable values are changing. So there's 8 being substituted in for f. That gets assigned into t2, and you'll see that t2 also changes from 3 to 8. The next line of code says print f, and what that means is the print command will display whatever expression follows it on the output. And the expression here is just the variable f. So as before, we look it up, we find its value, substitute it in, and then we put it onto our output display. So at this point, we've finished all of the 3 lines of indented code, and so one cycle of our loop has completed. We're going to just create another row in our trace table to keep track of that. We can now go back to the top of our block and go again. So let's reevaluate f. So T1 and T2 gets updated with its most current values of 2 and 8. It gets evaluated to 18 and gets assigned into f. F gets updated from 8 to 18. Next line of code, the value of f, which is 18, gets assigned into T2, so that changes from 8 to 18. We're going to display f on the screen. Now f is 18. Now the one thing different about the print command is that when we display things to the output, it preserves any previous output. So the previous 8 there doesn't get deleted. The new value of 18 just gets displayed underneath it. Okay, we're going to update the number of times we've repeated so we can keep track of that. We've got one more time. So the right-hand side here gets reevaluated to 38. That gets reassigned into f. F gets assigned into T2, so that goes from 18 to 38. And then we display f on the screen. 38 there underneath the previous values. Update the number of times repeated to 3. We've now repeated 3 times, so the whole loop is done. We then go to the next line of pseudocode. There are no more. So the algorithm is done. And now we can determine our answer. The output of the pseudocode is indeed a list of numbers, and the final number in that list is 38. And that's how we determine the answer to that question.